He thought she didn't belong in a place where dresses cost more than most people's monthly rent, but he had no idea he was about to ruin his own career. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. Now, back to Emily Carter. The boutique glowed under warm golden lights, crystal chandeliers reflecting off polished marble floors that echoed softly with every step. Designer dresses lined the walls like artwork, each tagged at $3, $4, even $5,000. It was the kind of place where status spoke louder than words, where appearances decided everything before a single sentence was exchanged. And then Emily walked in. Simple jeans, a soft cream sweater. No designer logos, no flashy accessories, just a quiet presence that seemed almost out of place against the luxury surrounding her. But her posture was steady, her gaze calm, as if she had every right to be there. The moment the door closed behind her, the subtle shift began. Vanessa Blake, the senior sales associate, glanced up from behind the glass counter. Her eyes scanned Emily from head to toe in less than 2 seconds, and in that brief moment, a judgment was made. Not a customer. Not serious. Not worth the time. Vanessa's lips curved into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind reserved for people she had already dismissed. Around her, 2 other associates exchanged quick looks, the silent language of a room trained to categorize people instantly. Emily walked toward a display of evening gowns, her fingers brushing lightly over the fabric of a deep navy dress. It shimmered under the lights, elegant but understated. She studied it for a moment, then gently lifted the tag, as if considering something meaningful rather than just the price. "Can I help you?" Vanessa's voice cut through the quiet, smooth but edged with something sharper beneath. Emily turned, offering a small, polite smile. "Yes, I was hoping to try this one." For a split second, Vanessa hesitated, then let out a soft, almost amused breath. "That piece is part of our premium collection," she said, her tone carefully measured, each word carrying an unspoken implication. Emily nodded, unfazed. "I understand." But Vanessa didn't move. Instead, she crossed her arms lightly, tilting her head just enough to signal doubt. "We typically reserve fittings for clients with appointments," she added, glancing briefly at Emily's outfit again, as if reinforcing her point without saying it outright. A faint murmur rippled from the other side of the boutique. Someone chuckled under their breath. Emily's hand lowered slowly from the dress, but her expression didn't change. No embarrassment, no anger, just a quiet stillness that somehow made the room feel different. Vanessa mistook it for hesitation. She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly, though not enough to keep others from hearing. "You might be more comfortable browsing our outlet section," she suggested, her smile tightening. "It's more accessible." For a brief moment, time seemed to pause. The air shifted, heavy with something unspoken. Emily looked at her, really looked this time, her eyes steady, unreadable. And then, just as quietly as she had entered, she let her hand fall to her side. The room waited for her reaction. But she didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply gave a small nod, as if she had just understood something far more important than a dress. And in that silence, something unseen began to turn. Vanessa held her smile a second too long, watching Emily's calm reaction as if waiting for it to crack, but it never did, and that unsettled her more than any argument could have. Most people either protested or walked away in embarrassment, but this woman did neither. Emily simply turned back toward the dress for one last glance, her fingers no longer touching the fabric, her expression composed, almost thoughtful, as if she were quietly measuring something invisible in the room. Around them, the boutique resumed its soft hum, but the atmosphere had shifted. The other associates pretended to return to their tasks, though their eyes kept drifting back. Vanessa cleared her throat, stepping slightly closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor with deliberate precision. "Ma'am, I really think it is best if you look elsewhere," she said, her tone firmer now, the polite layer thinning. A couple browsing near the entrance slowed down, their curiosity drawn by the tension. Emily finally nodded once, a small, almost graceful motion. "I understand," she replied softly. Her voice carried no bitterness, no defensiveness, and that only deepened the strange silence forming around her. She reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone, glancing at the time for just a brief moment, then slipping it back without a word. It was such a simple action, but something about it lingered. Vanessa noticed, though she could not explain why it bothered her. "Thank you," Emily added, her tone steady, then turned toward the exit. Each step she took echoed faintly, unhurried, measured, as if she refused to be rushed out of any place, no matter how unwelcome she had been made to feel. As the glass door opened, a soft chime rang through the boutique, and for a split second, the entire room seemed to pause. Then she was gone. The silence broke almost immediately. One of the younger associates let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. "I mean, did she really think she could afford anything in here?" she whispered, not quite as quietly as she believed. Another smirked, folding a silk scarf back into place. Vanessa exhaled, smoothing down her blazer, regaining her usual composure. "We have standards for a reason," she said, her voice returning to its confident, practiced tone. "This is not a place for confusion." A few customers nodded subtly, reassured by the familiar hierarchy being restored. But not everyone seemed convinced. Near the fitting area, an older woman watched the door thoughtfully, her brows slightly furrowed, as if something about the exchange had not sat right with her. Vanessa chose to ignore it. She turned back to her station, tapping lightly on the glass counter, already moving on in her mind. Another sale, another client, another moment forgotten. Or so she thought. Outside, the afternoon sun stretched across the street, casting long reflections against the boutique windows. Emily stepped onto the sidewalk, pausing just long enough to take a quiet breath. The city moved around her, cars passing, people talking, life continuing as if nothing had happened. But her expression remained unchanged. No anger, no embarrassment, only that same calm stillness, now carrying something else beneath it, something deliberate. She reached into her bag this time, pulling out her phone again, and this time she did not hesitate. Her fingers moved with quiet certainty as she selected a contact. The call connected almost instantly. She did not need to say much. "I am done here," she said simply. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a voice that shifted in tone the moment it heard hers. Respectful, attentive, immediate. Emily listened for a second, then gave a small nod, even though the person on the other side could not see it. "No," she added softly, her gaze lifting toward the boutique window behind her. "Just come." She ended the call, slipping the phone back into her bag, as if nothing significant had just been set into motion. And inside the boutique, behind polished glass and confident smiles, no one had any idea that the quiet woman they had just dismissed had not left empty-handed. She had simply chosen a different way to return. Inside the boutique, the rhythm of luxury returned quickly, or at least it tried to. Vanessa adjusted a display of handbags with precise movements, her reflection staring back at her from the polished glass, composed and confident as always. The brief interruption had already begun to fade in her mind, filed away as another routine moment in a place where status defined everything. "Some people just do not understand where they are," she said lightly, her voice carrying just enough for the nearby associates to hear. A soft ripple of agreement followed, small nods and knowing smiles reinforcing the invisible rules that governed the space. Yet beneath that surface, something lingered. The older woman near the fitting area had not moved. She still glanced occasionally toward the door, her expression thoughtful, as if replaying what she had just witnessed. Vanessa noticed, but chose not to engage. Doubt had no place in her world. Minutes passed, then more. The boutique filled with new customers, laughter and polite conversations blending into the soft background music. A couple admired a rack of evening gowns. A man in a tailored suit discussed a gift with another associate. Everything appeared exactly as it should, and yet, the air carried a faint tension, subtle but undeniable, like a note just slightly out of tune. Vanessa checked the time on her watch, then returned to organizing receipts behind the counter. Outside, the sunlight shifted, casting longer shadows across the street. Then, without warning, the atmosphere changed again. It started with a sound. Low, smooth, unmistakable. The quiet purr of an engine far too refined to belong to an ordinary vehicle. One of the associates near the front window paused mid-sentence, her eyes drifting toward the glass. "Is that?" she murmured. A sleek black SUV pulled up, directly in front of the boutique, its glossy surface reflecting the golden afternoon light like a mirror. It did not rush. It did not hesitate. It simply arrived, commanding attention without asking for it. Conversations inside began to slow, voices softening as curiosity took hold. The driver stepped out first, moving with quiet efficiency, then walked around to open the rear door. There was a moment, just a second, where everything seemed to hold its breath. Even Vanessa looked up now, her brows drawing together slightly. She had seen wealthy clients before, plenty of them, but something about this felt different. Deliberate, controlled, important. The door opened slowly. A polished leather shoe touched the pavement, followed by another. Then he stood, Daniel Carter. His presence was not loud, but it did not need to be. His tailored navy suit fit with effortless precision, his posture straight, his expression calm but focused in a way that made people instinctively step aside. The kind of authority that was not announced, only recognized. Inside the boutique, recognition came like a ripple through still water. One associate's eyes widened. Another straightened instantly. Even the customers sensed it, though they could not yet place why. Vanessa felt it too, a sudden tightening in her chest she could not explain. She stepped forward slightly, smoothing her blazer, her professional smile returning as she prepared to greet what was clearly an important client. The glass door opened with a soft chime. Daniel stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the room once, sharp and assessing, as if measuring every detail in a single glance. The polished floors echoed beneath his steps, each one steady, unhurried, deliberate. And then he stopped, not at the displays, not at the counter, but in the center of the boutique. His eyes lifted, scanning the faces around him, searching for something or someone. The room fell quiet, completely quiet. And in that silence, he spoke, his voice calm, controlled, and carrying more weight than any raised tone ever could. Where is my wife? The question hung in the air, simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. Vanessa's smile froze, her mind racing, trying to catch up with something she had not yet fully understood. Around her, the room seemed to shift again, the balance tilting in a way no one had expected. And for the first time that day, uncertainty entered a space that had always believed it was untouchable. The question did not echo, but it settled into the room like weight pressing against every surface. No one answered at first. No one moved. Vanessa felt her throat tighten as her mind raced through the last hour, replaying every detail with growing clarity. The simple woman, the calm voice, the quiet exit. Her. A flicker of realization sparked, but she pushed it down instinctively, as if denying it might make it untrue. Daniel Carter did not repeat himself. He did not need to. His gaze moved slowly across the boutique, measured and precise, pausing briefly on each face as though reading something beneath the surface. When his eyes reached Vanessa, they stopped. Not with anger, not with accusation, but with a stillness that was far more unsettling. Vanessa forced her smile to hold, though it no longer felt natural. "Sir, welcome," she began, her voice carefully composed, though just a fraction too tight. "How may we assist you today?" Daniel did not respond immediately. Instead, he took one step closer, his shoes making a soft, deliberate sound against the marble floor. "I asked a question," he said, his tone even, controlled, leaving no room for misinterpretation. "Where is my wife?" The words landed harder this time. Around the room, a shift occurred. One of the younger associates glanced nervously toward the door. Another looked down, suddenly very focused on rearranging a display that did not need rearranging. The older woman near the fitting area straightened slightly, her expression sharpening with understanding. Vanessa's mind caught up all at once. The image of Emily standing calmly in front of her replayed with painful clarity. The way she had not argued, the way she had not reacted, the way she had simply left. A cold realization settled in her chest. She swallowed, her posture stiffening despite herself. "I am not sure who you are referring to," she said, though the words sounded thinner than she intended. Daniel's gaze did not shift. If anything, it sharpened, just slightly. "A woman," he said slowly, "about 5'6", wearing a cream sweater and jeans. She was here less than an hour ago." Each detail felt like a step closer, like a quiet dismantling of every excuse Vanessa might have offered. Silence spread again, heavier this time. The boutique, once filled with soft music and quiet conversation, now felt frozen, suspended in a moment no one wanted to claim. Vanessa felt the attention of the entire room pressing in. Customers, staff, even the air seemed to wait. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her confidence slipping in ways she had never experienced before. There was someone, she admitted carefully, choosing each word as if it might determine the outcome. But she left. Daniel's expression did not change, but something in his posture did. A subtle shift. A quiet confirmation. He glanced briefly toward the door, then back at Vanessa. Did she leave? He asked, his voice calm. Or was she asked to? The question cut through whatever remained of Vanessa's composure. Her fingers tightened slightly at her sides. No one spoke. No one moved. The truth sat in the center of the room, undeniable, waiting to be acknowledged. Vanessa felt it, heavy and unavoidable. And for the first time in a place where she had always controlled the narrative, she had no immediate answer. The room went completely silent. Vanessa's silence stretched just a second too long, and in a place where timing meant everything, that second said more than any explanation ever could. Her eyes flickered, not toward Daniel, but toward the door, as if hoping the answer might somehow appear there instead of forming on her lips. It did not. Daniel watched her without interruption, his expression unchanged, but the stillness around him seemed to deepen, as though the entire room had begun to revolve around a truth no one wanted to say out loud. She was browsing, Vanessa finally said, her voice carefully measured, though it carried a faint strain now, subtle but unmistakable. But she did not have an appointment, and we have policies for fittings and service. The words sounded rehearsed even as she spoke them, the familiar structure of justification rising automatically, as it always had. Policies, standards, expectations, the pillars she had relied on without question. Daniel listened, his gaze steady, his posture unmoving. And those policies, he asked quietly, require you to decide who belongs here before they speak. The question landed without force, yet it carried a weight that pressed against every person in the room. Vanessa felt it immediately, her confidence slipping another fraction. We maintain a certain level of clientele, she replied, her tone tightening slightly, as if trying to reclaim control. It ensures the experience remains exclusive. The word lingered, hanging in the air longer than she intended. Exclusive. Around her, the boutique no longer felt secure. It felt exposed. Daniel took another step forward, closing the distance just enough to make the moment unavoidable. Exclusive, he repeated softly, as if testing the word itself. His eyes moved briefly across the displays, the polished counters, the carefully curated image of luxury that surrounded them. Then they returned to Vanessa. Do you know who designs half of these collections? He asked. Vanessa hesitated, thrown off by the shift, her mind scrambling to follow. Our partners, our suppliers, she began, uncertain now. Daniel did not let her finish. My wife, he said. The words were not loud, but they cut cleanly through the room, precise and undeniable. A ripple of confusion passed through the staff. One associate's eyes widened. Another took a small step back, as if the ground beneath them had shifted without warning. Vanessa blinked, the meaning of his statement arriving in fragments, refusing at first to settle into something real. She chooses simplicity, Daniel continued, his voice calm, almost reflective. She walks into places like this without announcing who she is, because she believes respect should not require proof. Each word felt deliberate, each sentence placing another piece into a puzzle Vanessa could no longer avoid. The image of Emily standing quietly in front of her returned again, clearer now, sharper, impossible to dismiss. The way she had not reacted, the way she had simply accepted what was said, as if she had seen it before. And today, Daniel added, his gaze steady, you showed her exactly what she expected. The room went completely still. Vanessa's carefully constructed composure fractured in silence. The confidence that had once defined her now felt distant, replaced by something unfamiliar, something heavy and undeniable. For the first time, she understood that this moment was not about a sale, or a misunderstanding, or even a mistake. It was something far deeper, and there was no way to undo it. The words did not echo, but they settled into every corner of the boutique, heavier than anything that had been said before. Vanessa felt them fully now, no longer as fragments, but as a complete realization that could not be avoided. My wife. The phrase repeated in her mind, each time stripping away another layer of certainty she once held. Around her, the staff stood frozen, their earlier confidence replaced by a quiet tension that no one dared to break. Even the customers, who had once been passive observers, now watched with sharpened attention, sensing that something far more significant than a simple exchange had unfolded. Daniel did not raise his voice. He did not step closer again. He simply stood there, his presence alone holding the room in place. She does not care about the price tags, he continued, his tone even, almost reflective, as if he were speaking more to the space itself than to any one person. She cares about how people are treated when they think no one important is watching. Vanessa's breath felt shallow now, her hands no longer steady at her sides. The rules she had followed so confidently moments ago now felt fragile, as if they had been built on something far less solid than she believed. We have always valued excellence, she said quietly, though her voice no longer carried authority, only an attempt to hold onto something familiar. Daniel's gaze remained fixed. Excellence, he repeated, and this time there was a faint shift in his expression, not anger, but something closer to disappointment. Is not measured by who you exclude. The sentence landed softly, but it carried more weight than any accusation could have. A silence followed, deeper than before, one that did not invite interruption. Vanessa looked down briefly, her reflection in the glass counter no longer reassuring, but unfamiliar. She had spent years perfecting how to read people in seconds, how to decide who belonged and who did not. And now, for the first time, she questioned that instinct. Near the fitting area, the older woman stepped forward slightly, her voice gentle but clear. She handled herself with more grace than anyone in this room, she said, not looking at Daniel, but at Vanessa. You might want to remember that. The statement lingered, simple and direct. Vanessa swallowed, her composure slipping further, though she tried to regain it. If there has been a misunderstanding, she began, but the words faltered before they could fully form. Daniel did not interrupt her this time. He simply watched, allowing the silence to do what it needed to do. The weight of the moment shifted from confrontation to realization, from defense to reflection, and that was far more difficult to face. Outside, the faint sound of the city continued, distant and unaffected. Inside, everything had changed. Vanessa finally lifted her gaze, but the certainty that once defined her was gone. In its place was something quieter, something uncertain, something that did not yet have a name. Daniel glanced once more toward the entrance, as if expecting something or someone. Then, without raising his voice, he said, "She will decide what happens next." The words settled into the room like a final piece waiting to be placed. And just beyond the glass doors, footsteps approached. The sound of footsteps did not rush, did not demand attention, yet every head in the boutique turned toward the entrance as if pulled by something unseen. The glass door opened with the same soft chime as before, but this time, the air felt different, heavier, expectant. Emily Carter stepped inside. Nothing about her appearance had changed. The same simple jeans, the same cream sweater, the same quiet presence. And yet, everything about how she was seen had shifted completely. The room that had once dismissed her now watched in silence, every movement of hers carrying weight it had not been given before. She did not look around immediately. She did not acknowledge the stares. She simply walked forward, her steps calm, steady, unhurried, the soft echo of her shoes against the marble floor marking each second like a quiet reminder of what had already happened. Daniel's gaze softened the moment he saw her, a subtle change that did not go unnoticed. He stepped slightly toward her, not to lead, not to interrupt, but to stand beside her, equal, present. "You came back," he said, his voice low, carrying only to her. Emily gave a small nod. "I said I would," she replied gently. Then, and only then, she turned her attention to the room. Her eyes moved across the boutique, not with accusation, not with anger, but with a quiet clarity that made it impossible for anyone to hide from what had taken place. When her gaze reached Vanessa, it stopped. Vanessa felt it immediately, that steady, composed look that held no hostility, yet no longer carried the softness it had before. It was something else now, something grounded. Something certain. Vanessa took a step forward, her usual confidence replaced by a careful hesitation. Miss Carter, she began, the name unfamiliar on her tongue. There seems to have been a misunderstanding earlier. The words felt fragile, as if they might collapse under their own weight. Emily did not respond right away. She let the silence stretch just enough to allow the truth to settle fully in the room. Was there? She asked softly. The question was simple, but it carried a depth that made it impossible to answer casually. Vanessa's breath caught slightly. The rehearsed explanations she had relied on no longer felt sufficient. We were trying to maintain our standards, she said, though her voice no longer held the certainty it once did. Emily considered this for a moment, her expression thoughtful rather than reactive. Standards, she repeated quietly, as if examining the word itself. She took a small step closer, not confrontational, but present, impossible to ignore. Do your standards include deciding someone's worth before you know anything about them? The room went still again. No one shifted. No one spoke. Even the soft music in the background seemed distant now. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time, she had nothing to rely on. No policy. No script. Only the weight of what had already been done. Emily's gaze did not waver. I came here because I liked your work, she continued, her voice calm, measured, carrying through the silence with quiet authority. Not because I needed to prove anything. The statement lingered, not as a challenge, but as a truth that needed no reinforcement. Daniel remained beside her, saying nothing, allowing her words to define the moment. And in that silence, the balance of the room shifted completely, no longer held by appearances, but by something far more difficult to ignore. The silence did not break immediately, and that was what made it powerful. No raised voices, no sudden movements, just the quiet weight of truth settling deeper into every person in the room. Vanessa stood there, her posture no longer sharp, no longer commanding, but uncertain in a way she had never allowed herself to be before. The word standards still lingered in her mind, but now it sounded different, hollow in a space where it had once felt absolute. Emily did not rush the moment. She let it breathe, let it unfold naturally, her presence alone guiding the shift that no one could stop. Around them, the boutique felt smaller somehow, as if the polished walls and perfect displays could no longer hide what had just been revealed. A younger associate glanced down, avoiding eye contact, her earlier confidence gone. Another quietly stepped back, creating space without realizing it. Even the customers who had once observed with casual curiosity now stood still, aware that they were witnessing something far more significant than a simple misunderstanding. Vanessa finally spoke again, her voice softer, stripped of the sharp edges it once carried. That was not our intention, she said, though the words came slower now, each one carefully placed, as if she no longer trusted them completely. Emily tilted her head slightly, considering the statement with calm attention. Intent does not change impact, she replied gently. The sentence was not harsh, but it carried a clarity that made it impossible to dismiss. Vanessa lowered her gaze for a brief moment, the truth settling in fully now, no longer something she could avoid or reshape. Daniel remained beside Emily, silent, allowing her words to define the space. His presence was steady, not overpowering, but undeniably supportive, reinforcing what had already been made clear. Emily took a slow breath, her eyes moving once more across the boutique, taking in every detail, every face, every silent reaction. This place is beautiful, she said quietly, her tone thoughtful, almost reflective. The craftsmanship, the design, the care that goes into every piece. It deserves to be appreciated. The statement surprised the room, its sincerity cutting through the tension in an unexpected way. Vanessa looked up again, confusion mixing with something else, something closer to realization. But appreciation should not come with conditions. Emily continued, her voice steady, each word landing with quiet precision. Not based on how someone looks, not based on what you assume they can afford, and not based on whether you think they belong. The boutique remained completely still. No one interrupted. No one challenged her. Because there was nothing to challenge. The truth stood on its own. Vanessa's shoulders lowered slightly, the last traces of resistance fading. You are right, she said finally, the words quiet but genuine. carrying a weight far greater than anything she had said before. It was not a defense, not an excuse, just an acknowledgement. Emily held her gaze for a moment, then gave a small nod, accepting the honesty without pressing further. There was no need. The shift had already happened. The lesson had already landed. And in that moment, the room no longer felt like a place defined by hierarchy, but by something far more human, something that could not be measured or displayed, something that could only be recognized when it was almost too late. The room did not return to normal, not right away, and perhaps not ever in the same way again. Something had shifted too deeply for that. Vanessa stood quietly, her earlier confidence replaced by a stillness that felt more honest than anything she had shown before. Around her, the staff moved carefully now, as if aware that every action carried meaning. The unspoken rules that had once governed the boutique no longer felt unquestionable. Emily remained where she was, her presence calm, grounded, no longer overlooked, no longer misunderstood. She glanced once more at the navy dress she had noticed earlier, the fabric catching the light in the same quiet elegance that had first drawn her in. This time, there were no barriers between her and the choice. No assumptions placed in her path. Just the simple reality of a decision waiting to be made. She stepped toward it, her movements unhurried, and gently touched the fabric again, her fingers tracing its texture with the same thoughtful care as before. Vanessa watched, then took a step forward, not out of obligation, but with a different intention this time. "Would you like to try it on?" she asked, her voice steady, respectful, without the edge that had once defined it. The offer was simple, but it carried a sincerity that had not been there before. Emily looked at her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Yes," she said softly. The fitting room door closed behind her, and for a brief moment, the boutique held its breath again, not out of tension this time, but anticipation of something quieter, something more meaningful. When she stepped out, the room did not react with exaggerated admiration or forced enthusiasm. Instead, there was a genuine pause, a recognition of something that went beyond appearance. The dress fit her perfectly, not because of its design, but because of the way she carried it, with quiet confidence, with dignity that did not need validation. Daniel watched from a distance, a faint smile touching his expression, not proud in a boastful way, but certain, as if this moment had always been inevitable. Vanessa met Emily's reflection in the mirror, her own expression no longer guarded. "It suits you," she said, and this time, the words were not part of a sales technique. They were simply true. Emily considered herself for a moment, then looked away from the mirror, her decision already made. "I will take it," she said. The transaction that followed was quiet, almost secondary to everything that had come before. No rush, no pressure, no performance. Just a simple exchange, handled with a level of care that now felt natural instead of forced. As Emily prepared to leave once more, she paused near the entrance, her hand resting lightly against the door. She turned back briefly, her gaze moving across the room one last time. "It is not about who walks in," she said gently. "It is about how you choose to see them." The words settled softly, but they stayed. Daniel opened the door for her, and together they stepped out into the afternoon light, the city continuing around them as if nothing had changed. But inside, everything had. Vanessa remained where she was, her reflection staring back at her from the polished glass, no longer a symbol of certainty, but of understanding still in progress. The boutique stood just as it had before, beautiful, refined, unchanged in appearance. Yet beneath that surface, something new had taken root, something that could not be displayed, only remembered. And that day, without raising her voice, without demanding recognition, Emily Carter had reminded everyone in that room what dignity looks like.